All right, everybody. This is Andy Drake with NCSA Baseball. Appreciate you all joining me again here today. I've got another awesome college baseball coach interview today. I've got Coach Gordie Theisen from Albion College, pitching coach there. Coach, how you doing today?
Great, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely appreciate you joining. So, Coach, first of all, I know you guys are just a few days away from opening day there. Talk about kind of how the spring's been coming along. How's the preseason prep been looking for you guys?
Yeah, actually, opening day is tomorrow. We
Awesome.
play tomorrow and Saturday. Uh, Preseason practices have been great. We've been getting a lot of swings, a lot of live stuff inside. We've been out a few times on the turf, not baseball fields, but soccer, lacrosse, and football fields. So preparation's been good, and I think our guys are ready to go.
Awesome. So I'm a Michigan guy as well. So I know the northern school dilemma of like how are we going to get out and where are we going to work out and so forth. But obviously you guys are doing a lot of great stuff there, getting ready. So talk a little bit about kind of getting your feet wet there, just kind of getting to Albion. You've been around a while, been in a lot of programs, but talk about kind of the opportunity there to Albion. How did that come about as far as taking that new position there?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's been great being here.
Hmm.
And I started here officially on August 1st. So it's my first season here. Uh, but I've been a college baseball coach mostly in the state of Michigan since I was hired as the head coach at Siena Heights in the summer of 1987. So that's, I'm closing in on 40 years. The last 2 years, I was at Newberry College, Division II in South Carolina, and um, it, you know, I was away from my people. My
Hmm.
people in the Great Lakes region and in Michigan, um, and so I just when our season ended last year, uh, I started looking up here, and actually when the way it actually happened here at Albion was I saw. A tweet actually that was reposted or something by Aaron Klotz, Skipper's Dugout, saying that Matt Ricks, who's my head coach here, has been named the permanent head coach because he was an interim last year.
Hmm.
And so I shot Matt a text telling him congratulations, and he said, hey, if you know anybody that's looking for you know, full time. I got a full time position, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, I'm looking. So he called me, things kind of went from there. So
Awesome.
it's been great being not just back in Michigan, but being on campus here at Albion has been awesome.
That's great stuff. So, talk about that time down at Newberry. Obviously a long time in Michigan. A lot of kids say, that live in the north, man, I want to go south. I want to do those kind of things. Talk about kind of what it was like down there as far as kind of the opportunity for guys that's a little bit different, or how was it different, or is it pretty much like, hey, man, college baseball is college baseball?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is college baseball is college
Hmm.
baseball. Uh, Sometimes the difference in the South is that you're outside. And when the weather's bad, a lot of the schools in the South don't have indoor facilities. Obviously, some of the major universities, I'm sure, do. Uh, and, the 2 years at Newberry were, I think, my 11th and 12th years at Division II schools. So the level of baseball doesn't really change all that much. Obviously, in every conference, you're going to have teams that are at the top and teams that are at the bottom, and that doesn't change very much. And as being a Newberry being a smaller school, small liberal arts school like Albion and like other schools I've been at are, you're getting the similar kind of student athletes,
Hmm.
and you have a similar kind of vibe on campus. You got 1,000 to 1,500 students, and a lot of people know each other. So the things aren't very different, other than the fact that down south, you're outside on grass and dirt or turf or whatever it is you're playing on pretty much every day.
Yeah, and that can be advantageous, but I think that coaching in Michigan myself, like sometimes the fundamental work gets focused on a little bit more up north, perhaps, right? Because that's all we can do sometimes. So I think that there can be a little bit of that advantage, perhaps, if it's not just games, games, games too, right?
Right. There's no doubt. And really, as we've gone through our preseason stuff here, indoors, we've had during our hitting practice stuff when the pitchers are off doing their things. And really, and I'm a hitting coach now, and I've been a pitching coach for quite some time, other than when I was a head coach, when, head coaches have to have their hands in everything. But we've been able to have 3 cages with machines going for close to an hour at every practice. And when I was down south, we could have a machine on the field, and a machine in the cage, and on the field. Then you're able to maybe do some defensive work, which we're not doing live defensive work here, but we're getting our defensive work in, with the full infield indoors and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like we've been able to get a lot uh, of significant batting practice, in addition to when we have our live days. A lot of times we've got 3 pitchers at a time throwing live in the cages. So you've got catchers receiving, you've got hitters hitting, and that's been beneficial as well.
Absolutely. Anybody who thinks that like you can't get work in the north, I think they would be very sorely mistaken for sure. So
No
now,
doubt
coach,
about it.
Coach, you've been at this a long time, man. Like you said, you're coming up on 4 decades here. I would love to get your perspective on just kind of recruiting, how things have changed over that time. Like take yourself back to like the late 80s and kind of how recruiting was and how much different, and what, kind of strategies and sort of the things that you do in recruiting now, how that is like really different today.
Oh, certainly. Geez, in the late 80s, when I first became a college coach, we didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. We used business cards, much more than we do now. And I had to make sure that I had my office number listed on the business card and my home phone number. And back then in the late 80s and 90s at Siena Heights, where I was the head coach, uh, in order for people to contact me via telephone, it had to go to the main college switchboard. They'd send it to an administrative assistant, and she would, send it up to me. And there weren't answering machines. If I wasn't there, then I would have the one of those little notes that said, while you were out, so and so contacted you. And as far as recruiting and contacting recruits, we did handwritten letters through the post office that we sent home. And, we'd put our contact information in there, which the only contact information then was telephones, landlines. And then the other thing is that we weren't getting videos of guys. We had to go see them, which I still feel very strongly that we have to go see them play in person. And you had to do your legwork, which that has not changed. But now, if a kid or a potential recruit emails us, or his coaches contact us, or a recruiting service contacts us, then we can Google his name, and we can find out academic information. We can see the metrics. We can see stats. We can see videos. We can get contact information for the parents and everything. But that none of that information that we can find now has a leg up on seeing guys play in person. That has not changed for me anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you would say that like the actual assessment evaluation of players isn't what's changed. It's more about just the accessibility to having their information, being able to see more guys, have a wider pool of players to check out.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Coach, you've been at a few different programs and have had a ton of success at a lot of places you've been. Had some World Series trips, a lot of regional, appearances and so forth. A lot of different places you've been. So, kind of talk about all the different things you picked up along the way. What are some things that you've learned about yourself, about coaching, about recruiting, about what it takes for, college kids to have great success at different, opportunities that they have. Just kind of talk about some of the different things you've picked up along the way as far as having success at the college level.
Well, I'd probably start that by saying, uh, as many years as I've been doing this, one thing hasn't changed, and that's that you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know that phrase back when I became a head coach at the age of 27 or 28 or whatever it was. Uh, and at that time, when I first became a head coach, I was relatively naive as to the college coaching. I had been a high school teacher and a high school coach. Um, and so I had to learn a lot of things, uh, for, let alone just, being and acting like a professional and treating people the right way. Those are things that you think everybody knows, but until they experience it, they don't always know it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I have also learned, and part of that is just part of my life philosophies, which I tend to talk about with my players and fellow coaches every day. Uh, and that is, with everybody we meet, we are going to be ignorant of something that they know and they can teach us, or that we can learn from them, whether they're trying to teach us or not. So there are so many things that I know now that I didn't know back in the late 80s, but there are a lot of things that I know now that I didn't know 2 years ago. And there are a lot of things that I'm going to know in 2 more years that I have no idea about now. So it's learning is a lifelong thing. And I also learned when the way we teach and coach baseball started evolving, because it didn't evolve a whole lot before a lot of the measurement type things came out. And then I had to make sure that I stayed up to date on all of that stuff. Otherwise, I would become obsolete as a coach. And actually, I learned more science and math after the age of 60 than I did in my first 60 years.
Putting that all to play. Baseball is definitely very much about the analytics and about assessing things. Obviously there's some things on paper we can pick up and learn, and but again, it comes back to, like you talked about, we still got to play the game, and we still got to compete, and we still got to know how to do those things too. So how do you assess that in a player when you're looking at a player? And I know you're just getting started there at Albion, just about 6 months or so. But when you're out there recruiting players, or you're talking to players about, like, hey, here's what an Albion kid looks like. What is that? What is it? What do you kind of tell them, or what do you kind of look for when you're out evaluating recruits?
Well, for me, it's that hasn't necessarily changed since I got to Albion, but I like dirtbag players, guys that are going to go all out all the time, that don't need to be motivated by somebody else. Obviously, it's part of our job to help them to be dirtbags all the time, and not just when they're feeling good, not just when things are going great, um, but also, we one of the things we've been focusing on this year is we want guys that are physical players and or are potentially physical players, because when we're seeing them at 16, 17, 18 years old, they're not as physical as they're going to be at 19, 20, 21. But it takes a kid with work ethic and with some intrinsic motivation to be able to have the physicality and everything else all come to fruition, as they continue to do what I call chop wood,
Mm-hmm.
when we're not watching them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, excuse me. Albion's a really good academic school as well, and
Yes.
the Division III philosophy, right? Non-athletic scholarship, and student athlete, really kind of putting the student athlete first. I know you were at Adrian for a lot of years as well. Kind of talk about sort of the benefits of that sort of experience for a student athlete. I mean, there obviously are a lot of benefits of high scholarships and so forth. If there's athletic scholarships available, but talk about that D3 philosophy and why that's something that you're really kind of drawn to potentially as a coach.
Yeah, well, part of becoming a Division III athlete is to understand that you're in college not just to play your sport, but to actually receive the benefits of becoming a well-rounded student athlete. And that includes obviously the academics, which is really the main reason they're in school. But, being introduced to uh, people that are different than you are. And that happens on small campuses too. It's not, everybody here is not the same. And at a place like Albion, what I'm finding out is there's a great, great balance of student athletes and non-student athletes, as opposed to some other schools that I've been at, not just Division III schools, but other schools where there's such a high percentage of student athletes that there's not as many opportunities for interaction with I don't want to call them regular students because everybody's unique, but we can learn from those people too. And our athletes here, uh, their lives can be enhanced from everybody on campus. The other thing about being at many D3 schools is the size of the classrooms and the care you're going to get from not just your coaches, but other people in the athletic department, the faculty members, your academic advisors, and everybody else on campus. Because if a school is doing things well, then students understand that people care about them and they want them to succeed. And although ultimately it's the students' uh, own responsibility to succeed, they've got all kinds of people to help them. And those people know who they are in general, whereas at some bigger schools, they don't always know who you are. So there are so many things that can benefit the student athletes at these schools. And with, you talk about the non-athletic scholarships, guys are playing because they're passionate about competing, they're passionate about improving in their sport, they're passionate about trying to win championships and being great teammates, and those kind of things are so beneficial for our guys for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about the timeline for your guys' recruiting there. Are you guys still able to look at seniors now? Are you getting on the 27? Just kind of give us a little bit of some insight into kind of how your whiteboard's looking. How are things coming together there for you guys as far as your program goes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because and yes, we are still looking at seniors. Um, we've got some commitments. We don't have the full class that we want. And actually, what we're doing here, we currently have 48 players on the roster. We want to get our roster down roughly to 35 to 42. So we're not eliminating guys from our team, but what we're trying to do is bring in recruiting classes of, approximately 10 guys, because we do that for a few years, then we have the total number that we want. Now, in doing that, um, we can't. I mean, yeah. At first, we kind of have to cast kind of a wide net, but ultimately, we can't just offer roster spots to everybody and anybody and hope that 2 out of 5 guys are going to, contribute for us. We have to make good decisions on that because of that. And so we're still recruiting the 26 class, but we on my laptop here, I've got obviously a list of 27s and a history of or what I should say, email folders on each of the 27s we've interacted with, and with our the software programs we use for recruiting, we've got all that info. So spring and summer, spring is certainly going to be in part, when we get opportunities to watch high school games, in part to see guys we've already recruited or guys we're trying to wrap up, but also to make that list of 27s get a little bit bigger and at the same time see the 27s that are already on our list. So, as you know, recruiting occurs 365 days a year. And really, once our season ends, my plans every year, it doesn't change from year to year. Every year, I know that when I wake up in the morning, that I'm either going to go watch somebody play or go watch several guys play, or I'm going to probably be on the road unless it's raining all around the Great Lakes region. And there aren't, what has changed now is back when I was at Siena Heights, I was one of the younger guys doing that. And back then, there were more major league scouts watching high school guys. There were more rounds in the draft. And you would network with those guys back then. Today, when I go out recruiting, which I love to do, I see a lot of young guys that are graduate assistants, part-time coaches, volunteer coaches, and I start developing relationship with those guys because we see each other every week, because we're at the same places, the same events. Now, I will say there are a lot more teams out there than there used to be, and a lot more players to see. So the college coaches that are out there are scattered more than in the past. You've got tournaments with 70 or 80 teams going on, whereas before 4th of July weekend, I can remember going to the Rose City tournament in Jackson where there was maybe a dozen teams, and that covered most of the better players in the state. And now you can see a team that's unknown to you and find some diamonds in the rough with those guys. And so, you can't just say, oh, I'm not going to go see these teams. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Oh yeah,
the 27s are there. And of course, I mean, the 28s are, but I mean, we've got names, but we're not that we're not paying attention to those guys, but when we see the ones we like, we're going to write their names down.
absolutely. So it's really kind of a year and a half kind of thing that you're probably kind of getting ahead, give or take.
Right.
Yeah.
The division ones are recruiting 4
Mm-hmm.
classes.
Mm-hmm.
We're recruiting maybe 1.5, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Now, Coach, you've been you've been at this a while, but talk a little bit about kind of how you utilize camps. How do you guys plan to utilize camps there? How have you kind of looked at them in the past? How have those been beneficial for you to see potential players that might have interest in the program? Kind of talk about kind of where camps play into all this.
Well, and camps vary from school to school, partly based on the level of Division 1, 2, 3, NAI, junior college, or partly based on uh, geography. When I was at Grand Valley, Grand Valley is kind of a destination place for Division 2 athletes of all sports, and so it was easy to get 100 kids at a camp there. And we would invite, junior college and Division 3 coaches to come and work and pay them. And that's part of the process too, where a high school kid or their parents can see, oh, there's going to be, a handful of coaches from other schools there. Now, since I got to Albion, we haven't hosted our own camps. There have been a couple camps on campus that we've worked at. And I really don't know the history of Albion having camps, but it's also a way. I mean, we've got 2 full-time coaches and 4 basically volunteer coaches, so it's a way, it can be a way at a lot of colleges to help those volunteer coaches at least be able to, pay for their meals every now and then or whatever, because usually they have other sources of income, but they're piecing things together, and that's not always an easy thing either.
Mm-hmm.
So but the great thing about camps is that we can be at any camp or showcases, and we can see a lot of guys in one day at one place. And so it's not just our camps that would be beneficial for us, but it's other schools and other organizations' camps, whether we're going there to get paid to work or just to observe and take notes and all that.
Absolutely. Now, you guys are in a geographically in an area where, kind of like, Detroit, some other larger, urban centers are not too far away. You guys tend to think you're going to probably focus mostly sort of like, let's win this Michigan area. Do you have plans to maybe expand a little bit geographically? How do you kind of anticipate sort of the geographic reach of what your recruiting classes might look like?
Yeah, well, obviously, the easiest guys to see play in person are the ones that are closest to us. So, you know, the Detroit suburbs are an hour and 20 minutes away. On the in the western suburbs, eastern suburbs are another half hour, and northern suburbs and southern. Uh, Toledo's an hour and a half away. Kalamazoo is less than an hour away. Lansing is less than an hour. Ann Arbor's less than an hour. So it's easy for us to go to games and tournaments in those places and be able to be back home and sleep in our own beds at night. It's harder to see guys that are farther away. It takes money, it takes time, and like everything in life, when you're one place, you can't be in another place. Um, or while you're watching some guys play, you can't be watching other guys play. So I know we have talked in the office about, maybe some areas of the country that have been untapped for us. And though I like that idea, it's a challenge, and depending on the player's interest, the player's abilities, at least what we can see before we see them online, we we may take the time and expense to travel farther to see them. Um, but it's a challenge, and I know personally, although now that I'm here, there we only have a few players that I had ever seen play before I arrived on campus at Albion. But obviously, I'm getting to know them. But I know I was at Siena Heights for 16 years, Adrian for 9, Hillsdale for 8. So when you're there for a long time, then you get to trust people in other geographic regions, coaches and all that. But I also know that I've been at schools that have recruited guys from farther away that nobody on the coaching staff had seen. And sometimes it's like, it's like fishing in the ocean for a specific kind of fish that you don't even know what you're looking for. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And some of those guys that come sight unseen are are not ready to play and may never be. And so that's a risk. Now, they might be valuable members of the college community, but they might not be able to play. And then sometimes you're going to get lucky. I mean, there might be a reason they don't have opportunities at the schools that are relatively local to them, and maybe they're not looking local. Maybe they are looking to go away. Um, but I'm probably different than a lot of coaches that way. I like to have boots on the ground, so to speak, and see them. If we can go to Florida and see somebody, great. I mean, we're playing there in a couple of weeks. Are we going to get a chance to see any high school games? I don't know. Um, but then again, you know, sometimes it's okay to take a chance on those guys. And for us, really, at all the Division III schools in the country, it's not like we're making a scholarship investment in them. Now, do we want to miss on a kid and if our roster is getting smaller and recruit a kid because of whatever somebody says to us, that somebody who we don't know yet, uh, and take a chance that because we're not giving them a scholarship, that if they don't work out, it's okay. Well, we don't really want to do that,
Mhm.
but it might happen.
Well,
I,
and you're looking at it like from the family's perspective too. Like, hey, we don't necessarily want to bring them out here if it may not work out, because for them that's maybe a little bit of a loss of a year as well too. So you want to make sure that you're doing right by the family as well.
Sure, no doubt about it. Because ultimately, when you start recruiting people, you develop a relationship and you care about them, and then when they get here, you get to know them even more, and you care about them and even more. And so you don't want, you never want those kind of situations to happen.
Yep. Yep.
Unfortunately, they do at every level, and especially today, you see, uh, freshmen getting looked over, or high school guys getting looked over by the Power Fours or the D1s because of their focus on recruiting from the portal, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. All right, coach, this has been great. I'd love to just get a little bit from you here if you got a couple minutes left, but
sure.
just some advice for families. If you think about like, all right, you've been at this a long time. What are some things that you would say like, hey, I've experienced these kind of activities from recruits. Do those things. If you want to get recruited by a program, these are good things to do. These are things that have turned me off, right? Like what, and on the flip side of that, what are some things that have been like, all right, that maybe turned us off from a family or a recruit? Just some advice or some things you've experienced in your interactions over the years.
All right. Well, first, I'm going to say from a parent perspective, I have a son that was a college baseball player, and he was being recruited, and I was NAI head coach at the time. And when he started getting interest from Division I programs, then I knew he probably wasn't going to play for me. And through his recruiting process, what mattered to me the most, and of course, I had an idea of that he could play, you know, because I see, and at that time we were playing against Division Ones, and so I would see the Division Ones play, but I all I wanted for him was to play for coaches that were going to care about him as a human being. I knew the baseball part of it was going to take care of itself. So that would be one thing that I would say to the parents, uh, they I don't want to tell them what they should think, but they I'm assuming they want the the coaches that are going to be with them every single day of their college life to care about them as human beings, before they care about them as baseball players. Now, some of the things that I would recommend to parents to do or not do, I would say just I would want them to be themselves, to be genuine people, uh, to not be dishonest. I know there are some dishonest coaches out there. As a matter of fact, I would also tell parents, watch. It's always a red flag if a college coach they're talking to is a negative recruiter. In other words, speaking negatively about another college program. That should be a red flag that when their kid doesn't perform like that coach expects, that he's going to be telling other people negative things about them or the family. Uh, but anyway, I digress there. But there's not a lot of things that turn me off about families. I just want them to be who they are, because we're going to recruit who they are, and we're going to coach who they are, who
Mm.
the kid and the parent, and so we don't want them to put on a fake uh, image of themselves, um, because it's just, I mean, I know they're in a way they're selling their kids, and in a way we're selling ourselves as human beings as well. Um, but with me, usually I want my players to know what they can expect from me every day, and they're not wondering what I'm going to be like when I show up at practice or game day. They know what to expect from me, and I hope in the recruiting process that they learn that as well. And so that would be the biggest advice I would say to parents and high school guys is, be who you are. Don't try to be something you're not. And, don't say things like, oh, the level doesn't matter, and then jump at the first scholarship offer they get. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously then the level did matter. I understand that we're all evolving as human beings. We are all works in progress. And so 16, 17, 18-year-old kids are still trying to figure out who the heck they are. But I'm 67 years old and I'm doing the same thing. But that would be the biggest piece of advice. Just be who you are, and don't act like salesmen. You don't have to tell us what your kid does well because we know already.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, that's great advice, Coach. Great stuff. Well, I really appreciate the time this morning, Coach. If there's anything we can do to help you guys, please let us know. But I'd love to get you back on for another conversation soon. Maybe talk some pitching or something if we get a chance. That'd be all right.
Sounds good, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Coach. Good luck with the start of the season, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.